The Sopranos produced one of television's greatest villains, and it wasn't Tony. Rewatches reveal something strange about this show. The scenes that actually unsettle you aren't the murders, they're the conversations at Green Grove Retirement Community. David Chase never pitched this as a mob story. His exact words when selling the series were, "A mobster in therapy having problems with his mother," and that one character is why the show exists at all. There's a moment in season 1 that I keep coming back to. Livia Soprano, played by Nancy Marchand in an Emmy-nominated performance, threatens to gouge out her own child's eye with a fork. In another scene, she tells her husband she'd rather smother her children with a pillow than let them move to Nevada. These aren't metaphors or figures of speech, and by the end of that season, she nearly makes good on the threat. What follows is exactly how a woman in a nursing home engineered a mob hit on her own son, and why the show argues she's the one who broke Tony in the first place. Before getting to the murder plot, understanding what Livia already did to Tony matters more. The assassination attempt wasn't the beginning of anything, it was the finale of a lifetime of damage. Season 3 contains a therapy scene that unlocks the entire show. Tony is trying to understand why panic attacks have plagued him his whole life, and Dr. Melfi walks him back to a memory from when he was 11 years old. What he witnessed was his father, Johnny Boy Soprano, chopping off a butcher's pinky finger over an unpaid debt at Satrial's pork store. That night, Johnny Soprano brought home free meat from that same butcher, and young Tony watched his mother's reaction. Livia became flirtatious and excited, visibly aroused by food obtained through violence. Tony collapsed right there. That was the first panic attack of his life. Melfi connects this directly to the pilot episode, where Tony has a panic attack while grilling sausages. Meat, violence, and mother became fused together when he was 11, and those wires never uncrossed. This isn't backstory for backstory's sake. This is the engine driving the entire series. Tony's panic attacks, the reason he entered therapy, the reason this show exists at all, traced directly to a moment where his mother revealed what actually excited her. And that's not even the most disturbing thing she did to him as a child. Flashback scenes show young Tony at the dinner table with Livia holding a fork, telling her own son that she could stick it right in his eye. David Chase confirmed in interviews that this line came directly from his own mother, Norma Chase. The fork threat, the smothering threat, the arousal at violence. This is the woman Tony kept visiting with gifts, kept seeking approval from, kept trying desperately to love. And in season 1, she decides to have him killed. Not directly, though, because Livia never does anything directly. Livia's genius, and that word is intentional here, is that she never gives an order and never makes a request. Information flows to the right person, and she lets them reach the conclusion she wanted all along. Her operation with Junior Soprano demonstrates exactly how this works. First comes positioning. She establishes herself as his confidant, and Junior even tells her she would have been the boss of a family in another life. Her response is pure deflection, calling herself a babbling idiot and reminding him that her son put her in a nursing home. The victim posture is established and deniability is locked in. Then the leaking begins. She tells Junior that Tony sees a psychiatrist, which is a violation of mob rules serious enough to get Tony killed. She mentions that Tony sold the family house. She reveals that 3 of Junior's capos have their mothers living at Green Grove, adding that they should be living in normal homes with their sons like human beings. And after each piece of information lands, she performs her signature retreat by saying it upsets her and threatening to stop sharing anything at all. What's actually happening here is manipulation at its most precise. Junior believes he's extracting information from a confused old woman who can't help herself. He doesn't realize that every word is calculated and that she's steering him toward a conclusion while maintaining total deniability. Only one person in the entire show sees through the act. Carmela confronts her directly, calling the poor mother victim routine textbook manipulation, telling Livia she knows the power she has and uses it like a professional. Livia's response is perfect. She asks what power, reminds Carmela she's just a shut-in. She operated like a consigliere in a housecoat, shaping a murder without ever speaking the word. Feeding Junior information wasn't enough to get Tony killed, though. She needed to push him over the edge, and what she says next is the most chilling line in the entire series. Junior's paranoia is building at this point. He suspects Tony is consolidating power around him, but he hasn't decided to act yet, and Livia needs one more nudge to get him there. Outside a movie theater, she tells Junior about her cousin Keiki. After Keiki had a lobotomy, Livia says he looked exactly like her son, empty and hollow like a shell. Then she delivers the line that changes everything. Better Keiki had died than go on living like that, she tells Junior. That's what his own mother always used to say. That sentence needs to be read twice to understand what's happening. Livia is telling Junior that Tony would be better off dead. She's wrapping a murder endorsement in the language of maternal mercy, giving Junior permission to kill her son by framing it as an act of kindness. This is not a mob hit motivated by power or territory or money. This is a mother greenlighting her son's assassination because he put her in a retirement home and started seeing a psychiatrist. Junior hires 2 outside hitmen after this conversation. They catch Tony buying orange juice in a deliberate Godfather reference, but Tony spots a reflection at the last moment and the first shot misses. In the chaos that follows, one hitman accidentally kills the other, and Tony escapes with a gunshot wound to his ear. Tony survived, but barely, and then the FBI played him the tapes. Green Grove had been bugged the entire time. Tony sat there and listened to recordings of his own mother feeding Junior every piece of information. The psychiatrist visits, the capo's mothers at the retirement home, the Keiki speech about mercy killing. What I haven't mentioned yet is Tony's response. It wasn't just rage. It was a callback to exactly what Livia threatened to do to him when he was a child. If this is landing differently than your first watch of the show, subscribe now because breakdowns like this go up every week. Tony drives to Green Grove after hearing those tapes. He's not there to talk. He walks into her room and picks up a pillow. The intention is unmistakable. He's going to smother his mother, and the threat she made about her own children all those years ago, about smothering them with a pillow rather than taking them to Nevada, is about to come back on her. Staff members interrupt before he can act. Livia has just suffered a stroke and is being wheeled out in a gurney. Tony follows her down the hallway, screaming that he tried to do right by her and she tried to have him whacked. The staff keeps telling him she can't understand what he's saying. Tony's response cuts through everything. He tells them to look at her face, that she's smiling, that even now she has a smile on her face. Even in the middle of a medical crisis, the mask slips. She hears every word. She understands exactly what's happening, and she's smiling about it. David Chase originally planned for Tony to succeed in this scene. In the original film script, before it became a series, smothering Livia was the ending, but Nancy Marchand's performance was too good to lose, so Chase kept her alive for 2 more seasons. That raises the question the show forces every viewer to answer eventually. Livia tried to have her son killed. Tony murders people throughout all 6 seasons. Who is actually worse when you weigh everything? Tony Soprano is a murderer, full stop. Making the case that his mother is the worst villain means confronting what she actually did compared to what he did. Most analyses miss the distinction that matters here. Tony operates within a system. His violence serves a purpose, warped and criminal, but still a purpose, whether that's business or survival or loyalty to his crew. He mourns friends when they die. He genuinely loves his children and agonizes over them. He spends 7 years in therapy trying to understand himself and occasionally breaks through. Livia is different. Dr. Melfi's clinical assessment, which suggests traits consistent with borderline personality disorder, describes a person incapable of experiencing joy. Livia derived pleasure only from other people's misery, and the show never depicts a single moment of warmth from her that isn't performed for manipulation. What tips the scales is this: Tony had no choice about the mob because he was born into that life. Livia was a housewife who chose cruelty as her operating system with no external pressure forcing her hand. The real case against her isn't even the murder plot, though. It's what she did to AJ. Season 2 shows young AJ visiting Livia in the hospital. He's struggling with questions about meaning and purpose, the kind of thing a grandmother should help with. Her response is to tell him that it's all a big nothing and ask what makes him think he's so special. AJ attempts his life in Season 6. During therapy sessions with his parents, he quotes Livia's words directly. Tony kills people within a code that has rules and logic. Livia poisoned her grandson's will to live because she couldn't feel joy herself and wanted company in her emptiness. The damage she inflicted was irreversible. The fork threat when Tony was a child. The smothering threat about her own children. The arousal at violence-obtained food. The murder conspiracy orchestrated from a nursing home. The nihilism transmitted directly to AJ. This wasn't a mob story that happened to feature a difficult mother. David Chase built the entire series around the opposite premise, a story about maternal damage that happens to be set in the mob. His insight was that the scariest person in a mobster's world isn't a rival boss or an FBI agent with a wiretap. It's his mother. Tony's panic attacks and emotional numbness and failed relationships with women all trace back to a woman who smiled on a hospital gurney while being confronted about ordering her son's death. What didn't fit in this breakdown is how Livia's shadow extends past her actual death. Nancy Marchand died in 2000 from lung cancer, forcing Chase to use CGI and old footage for Livia's final scene. But his original plan was far worse for Tony. Livia was going to testify against him in a RICO case, his own mother taking the witness stand to finish what the hitmen couldn't accomplish. The show also gives Tony a romantic relationship with a woman who turns out to be a psychological copy of Livia. And the moment he realizes what he's been doing is one of the most devastating scenes in the series. Comments are open if that breakdown would land for you.